Hey, how's it going? Very little lead in. Hey, you know what? We can do this, Ron. Hey there, Cubs and Cardinals fans. Welcome to the Team of Rivals podcast. It's, what is it? It's Tuesday, October 24th. It's game 7 of the NLCS. We already know that the Rangers, yes, made it to the World Series. You can follow us on social media, Team of Rivals Pod. That's it. For those of you who prefer to watch the show, you can still watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble every once in a while, like right now, for example. So I don't know the point in telling you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, but maybe if you stumbled on this after the fact. Ron and I are live streaming Game 7, NLCS. Elliot might join us later. What's the over-under on how many beers Elliot is into the night by the time he gets to,
Ron? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'd say a few. He said he had a prior engagement, which we know what that means.
Do we?
I have a pretty.
Do we know what that means?
Pretty good
we can
idea.
Speculate, but
it means he's not going to be in great shape.
Right. Which means that he'll be in fantastic shape.
I don't know about that.
Are you going to put yourself on the screen, or are you going to make people suffer through the torture of just looking at me and having me like in the corner of their televisions?
I guess I could do
that.
Is this screen okay? Will this one work for everybody? All right.
It doesn't really work for anybody, but
I got to tell you, we usually get this late in the playoffs, and we might catch, if it goes to a game 7 or a critical game, or we might catch a little bit of it. But I'd have to say that this league championship series on both sides has actually been fantastic. If you're just a baseball fan, it's actually been very entertaining to watch.
I don't disagree. And hey, look, let's celebrate something. I heard this. I don't know if it was late last night or this morning. I'm a little delirious today. For the first time since the Cubs won the World Series, neither the Astros nor the Dodgers are in the World Series this year. That alone is cause for celebration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think just the fact
Tommy Pham just angering his way into outs tonight in right field.
I saw that. We missed his. We jumped on a little bit later than we wanted to, but we missed an angry at bat too.
Actually, I was far more impressed by the shoulder block that he threw at the ball that bounced in front of him so that it wouldn't get past him. He didn't try to knock it down with his glove or anything. He just kind of gave it a little shoulder shiver so that it wouldn't roll past. That was I believe they teach that technique in Tom Emanski's videos, don't they? How to throw your shoulder at a ball.
Man, that is going back, isn't it? A little bit. Does he still do those?
I'm sure he does.
He has to, right?
I mean, I'm sure they're still out there, but I can't imagine.
We have to get
YouTube one. Now. I have to find it.
I know, right? Since you said it, or the Fred McGriff. What contraption was he selling online? Not online. It wasn't even online during that time, but it was some instructional video or something like that. The Crime Dog. They all had something like that. I wonder how those instructions stand up to today's swing horror approach.
Well, let's see. On Amazon.com, you can get Tom Emanski's Baseball World's defensive drills on DVD.
On DVD. Nobody can play it on DVD.
That's right. And at onlinesports.com, you can get Tom Emanski's 9 DVD video training series. So the whole Baseball World series, including, I'm gonna click on this so that we can get it all. Major League Base, teaching the mechanics of the Major League Base Runner, professional bunting techniques and strategies, guide to baseball strength and conditioning, the techniques of the Major League Pitcher, Major League Swing 2, defensive drills. That's obviously the most famous one. Major League Catcher, dynamic practice organization, and defensive strategies 101. So clearly all of these being used by all big league managers today.
I would say the bunting one is probably not.
You think that one's gathering dust?
I think that one's gathering dust. It is. What a polarizing topic, right? To this, I'd say, I normally I'd point to the younger generations, but it's ours too, man. There are so many people that just despise that particular player, its usage, no matter what occasion. There was I think I posted on Twitter X. I'm never going to get that right. that I know people were inflamed when the Astros, not give them credit, tried to bunt with runners on first and second, nobody out. They were down, I think 3-1, something like that. But they attempted a bunt. And I respect that, right? They push the guys over. You know, you're down by a couple runs. Now the guy could not do it.
Because it's probably the first time he's been asked to do it in 30 years.
Probably. And instead he hits this, weak little ground ball to the right side. And, it ends up being first and third with a double play in order, right? And for those that don't understand it, that's why people bunt. You'd rather have people at second and third, one out, and a fly ball at least gets you a run back. A base hit easily scores 2. But it's just people just don't want any part of that, man. But that's why they do it. That ground ball sets up a double play to get out of the inning. The Astros, I think, got 1 run back in that instance. But that's why bunting happens, and it's funny watching people just completely melt down when it's even attempted. But we're old, right?
We are old, and you'll be happy to know, Ron, that your instincts are. I mean, we already knew this. Your instincts are incredible. Fred McGriff, he was selling the Tom Amansky videos.
It was okay. It was the Tom Amansky
because apparently
empire.
Tom fixed. I'm looking at a site here. It says that Tom fixed Fred's swing when he was a prospect, and so roughly 6 years later, Tom Amansky approached him, and that's how he showed up in the Tom Amansky videos. Good times.
There we go. That looks like
2-1.
Phillies have pulled out in front. My the sliding glove.
I know who you were rooting for last night. That goes without saying.
Yeah,
who are you rooting for tonight?
As much as I typically like the underdog, right? And I don't have anything against either team here. The cast of characters on both sides. What's there to dislike really about the Diamondbacks, other than watching as a Cardinals fan, watching Zach Gallen take game 1 start. But other than that, there's no reason to dislike either team. I think the Phillies probably have the stronger of the two. They've got a pretty hellacious lineup. They've got good starting pitching. I mean, Arizona clearly is playing good ball right now, but I think the Phillies are the stronger team and give the National League probably a better chance against Texas. So who am I rooting for?
So does that mean that you'll be rooting for the National League team in the World Series?
I think so. I think typically I kind of stick to that unless, and put it this way, I usually stick that route unless like the Dodgers or somebody are in it and I'm tired of seeing them, right? I usually by default I root for Tampa Bay just because I want to finally see it happen for them. But I don't have a dog in this fight. I just want to see a good game and a good series, and it's ending up that way. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess typically I kind of pull for the underdog here, and I'd call the Diamondbacks the underdog, although they're both, I think they both got in kind of the wild card route.
I think I'm with you as far as generally pulling for the underdog if I don't have a dog in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I mean, who do I think I'm pulling a little bit more for the Diamondbacks just because I want to see Tommy Pham's anger on a national stage. And also, I don't want this idea of Kyle Schwarber being the avatar of analytics being proven right to continue. I want this to end. Although he has been on a hot streak, he's actually been hitting the ball. So
yeah, I know.
You have that. But in the World Series, I'm definitely going to be cheering for the Rangers simply because I want Adolis Garcia to continue to embarrass the Cardinals organization.
I don't. Well, I mean, obviously, I think that would be the cherry on top. I think the embarrassment has already happened, right? Seeing him, seeing both outfielders, him and Rosarena starting in the All-Star game was bad enough. Seeing him in the playoffs, okay, that hurts too. I think if you look at it like they already know they effed up.
Right.
The world already knows it. This would just be a little bit more salt in the wound that's already had like a block of salt rubbed into it. So,
well, and see, here's the bad thing about it. I mean, the salt being rubbed into the wound is going to be, you're going to hear about it every time he gets a big hit in the World Series. You're going to be reminded that the Cardinals traded him for cash considerations.
And in this case, it's going to sound weird. I mean, look, I didn't really get to know him when he was a Cardinal. He really didn't get an opportunity, right? So, there's
he had 19 major league at bats before they traded him.
So it's not the weirdness of like you with Schwarber, for instance. You saw him in a Cubs uniform forever, and it's weird seeing him not wear that one, right? A lot of us didn't get to know Garcia at all, so seeing him in another uniform is like, okay, well, whatever. It's like he's always been in a Rangers uniform because we don't know what the hell, barely knew what he looked like when he was with the Cardinals. So it's a weird place.
Yeah, that'd be like the Rangers watching Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, you never knew him.
And be like, oh.
Yeah, that's why Philadelphia fans probably didn't melt down for decades over Ryan Sandberg being in a Cubs uniform because, they never knew him. The Yankees never knew Willie McGee.
Exactly.
There's a list of these guys that go on and on and on, right? I want to say, didn't Scherzer start out at Diamondback? Or he was at least in their system at one point?
Might have been. I mean, I know he really broke through with the Tigers.
Right.
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the ones that really hurt are the ones that you give up on too early, right? Like the Padres with Anthony Rizzo.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Rizzo doesn't sting the Red Sox, but I'm sure that there's still a little bit of that. God damn.
Well, there's a lot of the goddamn with guys. The Cardinals had guys they felt were more valuable than these folks, and here we are looking up in October and seeing a lot of them that are difference makers.
And that's what stings, right? It's not that you traded a guy away. It's that you chose somebody else over that guy who either has failed to live up to the decision you made or who you gave up on, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about Tyler O'Neill, obviously, in the first case, and Harrison Bader in the second case, although you're now you're the first of two teams who's give up on Harrison Bader.
I know. So, you kind of look. I mean, none of us are wizards here. We don't ultimately know what's going to happen to these guys, or if they're going to pan out or not. But there have been a few that have been frustrated with them for holding on to. I mean, go to Randall Grichuk being one too. Now he's had a decent career post St. Louis. I think he ended up with Colorado last year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Maybe he moved somewhere else too. But
I think that's right.
Yeah. So, I was annoyed when they gave him a long runway to prove himself over and over again. I've been there with Tyler O'Neill. You've heard me say that for a long time. I don't know. Just I didn't have an opinion about Garcia one way or the other. Other than he looked like a big, strong dude. But he's caught on with the Rangers now. But you gotta remember, like he wasn't an instant success once he left St. Louis. He was still DFA'd beyond that.
Right.
So.
Right.
He picked something up, something clicked, and here he is making a difference. So I'd have to say, I don't know how much more you could possibly hurt Mo or the front office for these moves. I mean, the world clearly knows about it, but I'm sure that he's not pining to see Garcia and Zach Gallen in the World Series with the Diamondbacks Rangers combination, right? I'm sure he's not pining to see that because at this point, the only thing that's left for Cardinals fans to do is to post snarky shit on social media, right? And I'm sure that nobody in the Cardinals front office is going to be monitoring their X feed to see how many ats they've had of angry Cardinals fans watching former Cardinals farmhands make a difference in the World Series. So I'd say it's salt in the self-inflicted wound, but you get to the point where it doesn't matter how much more salt you add to it, it's not going to burn anymore, right?
Hey, since obviously things are only going to move kind of slowly here and we're not particularly invested in the games like we would be if one of our teams was in there. I don't know if you caught it, but some news out of San Diego today. Did you happen to see the developments there?
No, I did not. I've been, let me give you, before you go into that. So tomorrow night, final fall baseball game, football season is over. So I might get a semblance of life back. So no, keeping up with the recent happenings in San Diego has not been top priority, but now I am very eager to hear.
Okay, well.
As you place your
Yeah, strategically changing around the merch from, I think it was season 2. Yeah, so you may have heard that the Padres are up against it when it comes to their debt servicing, and they're potentially in violation of Major League Baseball's debt servicing rules. And so there seems to be kind of a double pressure on them, right? They went way over the luxury tax this year and got nothing for it. So there's that, right? Addressing that and maybe trying to reset their salaries a little bit. But then 2, also the debt servicing thing, right? Because Major League Baseball does have pretty stringent rules as far as how much debt you can take on as a team. So there's been a lot of speculation that Juan Soto is going to be put on the trade block this offseason to try and clear off that $30+ million that he's set to get this year. Well, in a interesting twist that's clearly all about debt servicing and not about the luxury tax, at least not yet. The Padres let the Giants talk to Bob Melvin yesterday. And today it was announced that Bob Melvin is moving up to San Francisco. So they are letting their manager just move on. And this apparently is not the first time that they've done this.
Well, I will say that there was talk of that being a destination for Bob Melvin as soon as they let Kapler go anyway, right? So that was kind of I think that had been floating around out there. I actually thought Soto would be on the trade block prior to hearing this one. I wasn't sure if just think of all the money they've dumped into all of these players, signing Tatis Jr. to that, huge extension, signing Manny Machado, and then trading for Juan Soto. You're like, gosh, how do they, it comes in natural questions. Even as if you were a casual fan, you'd be looking at it going, how can that team afford to do this? They're not Los Angeles. They're not Chicago. They're not New York. They're not Houston. So how can they afford this? And they were one of the first teams that won their rights back. So, the TV revenue wasn't like through the roof, right? They were one of the first ones. Do I remember that right? They were one of the first ones to retain their rights for broadcasting.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And they had games streamed for free this year because they didn't have, fans wouldn't have had a way to watch them. So I kind of thought he was probably on his way out anyway, on the block. And I think that, Pete, with that whole organization, you got to, they had such a bad year versus expectations. I mean, a lot of teams did, but I think you put those in the top 3, how disappointing their season had been. You wonder, right? Because San Diego's done this before. Man, they don't ride things out. Is it really the long game with them? It's not. No, it's not. They're very short to medium term, right? And it looked like they were setting themselves up for a long term, right? But I think that was a bet that kind of like your bet with Sunday Ticket. Oh God, what a terrible decision. This team was going to perform. Mm-hmm. And so all of the benefits that would accrue from having a team that was competitive would make up for the long-term dollar commitments that they had made. Mm-hmm. And when this team not just failed to make the playoffs, but dramatically underperformed, I'm sure that completely messed up their financial picture. And now they're having to take drastic action, letting a manager under contract walk. Well, I'm wondering how probably far. Having to trade Juan Soto. And what's going to sting about this is that they're not going to get back nearly the return that they sent to Washington because they have a player on an expiring going into next year. They'll have a player on an expiring contract who's going to be making $33 million, which is not an insignificant sum of money. Yeah. And everybody knows also what's working against them. Everybody knows that they have to make this deal. They got to clear some salary off the books. Yeah. And so they're going to end up with a net loss on the Juan Soto trade. I don't second guess them at all for having made it, but it's going to end up hurting them. Oh, and just to bring it all back around to the World Series and everything, the last time that the Padres allowed a manager under contract to walk, 2006, when Bruce Bochy went to San Francisco. To the Giants. Yep. And he only won 3 World Series while he was there, and that's all. He's 4 wins away from securing another one. Yep. You can't, sometimes you think about, when I look at, the careers of like Joe Torre. You got to say that was a great career. He's a Hall of Famer. Evidently, baseball writers thought the same thing. But you got to wonder, like, he didn't have a fair shake. I don't believe, in my opinion, when he was in St. Louis. He was only there briefly. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years, but it was in the early 90s. Anheuser-Busch owned the team. They weren't putting any money into it. They had traded away Willie McGee. They were letting Ozzie Smith kind of walk slowly into the sunset over 5 years. Traded away Vince Coleman. They kind of, tore down that 80s Whitey ball team. So when Torrey stepped in there, I mean, he just did not have the personnel, right, to do much with, you would think, right? So he was let go there and then goes to the Yankees, right? 96, I think, was an accomplishment because that team didn't have, it had a lot of the young stars that we got to know as, future Hall of Famers. But you look at those teams, those Yankees teams from 98 through 2000, that 3-year run they went on, and you're like,
what could he have done with that team?
Would it really mattered who was in that? Now, people are going to, within, people within baseball are going to say, it does make a difference, but I don't know.
I think that there are clearly managers who just aren't up for the job. So
right. Yeah.
If you can be a bad manager and be a detriment to your team, then there has to be the opposite, right? You don't have a bell curve that has no upper end, that only ends at 50%. So there has to be some effect that a good manager can have.
Sorry, I'm dying over here.
It's okay. I'm sure that our 3 viewers, I don't even know how many people are watching, but I'm sure that they're all very concerned about you.
I don't care. I reluctantly did one of these live streams. I hate doing them. And I don't know how many more we have left in us.
Live streams or podcasts?
Either. It's been this year has been a particular challenge, and it's been with youth sports, both school and rec related, and they're all on top of each other. So it's been extremely difficult, and I know nobody wants to hear that. They want regularly whatever they download on their podcatcher, and that's what they want, right? But it has been particularly challenging. I know that, being in the education system, you have certain times of the year where, events run late into the evening. Sometimes they run the whole week long, and by the time you get to Thursday, you're just like, I haven't been able to watch a lick of baseball. I don't think I can force myself to go on for 45 minutes to an hour and talk about something I haven't even been able to watch. And I've been in that boat too. So it has been particularly difficult. And I guess I always knew this day was coming, where you think when they're young, they require a lot of your attention. You're going to be free by the time they're 12 and 13. It is absolutely not the case. The things they do after school, the extracurriculars, start to really pile up. So kind of knew it was coming, but the reality really hit me this year in a very big way. So it's not getting any easier. And I've still got, a 7-year-old daughter, and that fun hasn't even begun yet.
What's her sport going to be?
I don't know. We've got her in gymnastics. She played t-ball in the spring and was just an utter disaster. She is. Okay, it's tied up now. This is a great contest.
This is good. This is much better than last night's game. Last night's game was over early.
She played t-ball, and what a shit show. And I mean that, right? Like, you hear a lot of parents say that about their kids. This is not hyperbole. She is an absolute shit show on team sports.
How so?
She does not listen.
Because she's not good, or she's not a good loser?
I don't even, well, in t-ball, they don't win or lose, right? Like, everybody scores, everybody bats.
Well, if she doesn't get a hit or whatever, does she not take it well?
I think, Pete, it's not even that. It's just not being interested and not listening. And doing whatever the hell you want while you're out on the field. Which
has got to drive you nuts.
Not in t-ball. I don't care. I hate that. I can't even believe I coached that for a year. I couldn't do it again. I think unless you're Ned Flanders, you're doing it 1 year and you are done and you're never doing it again. It is awful, especially when you start coaching older kids. To go back to the t-ball level is nearly it's impossible to watch, much less coach. You see the young dads that are out there, and there's a lot of young moms too that are coaching. You see these young parents out there with all the enthusiasm. Oh, we're going to be in sports. And they have all the patience and tolerance in the world, and it's all going to end. You know, you got 1 year left in you, parents, and you're never going to want to do this again, ever. Because you can't, I mean, hoarding your own kid is hard enough. Hoarding 11 or 12 of them is a whole new thing. And my daughter's coach asked me to sub for him once because he knew I was a coach in the same league, but the higher levels. I did it, but man, my wife had to help me. And I'm like, I am so glad that coaching in this age group is over. The machine pitch, the cringe that you feel every time one kid throws a ball hard at another kid, because you're like, half these kids don't even know how to throw and catch at this age anymore. And I don't know, man. All I have is I can do teenage or above at this point, and I can't go back. Like, I can't go back in age group and coach anymore. I just don't have it in me.
The ones I was always surprised by, because I would, you'd see the team, the coach names come out at the beginning of the season, and you can kind of cycle through the little leagues, various teams in there. The ones that I could never understand were the dads who are coaching two different levels and they're not back to back, right? They're like 2 or 3 years separated. I'm like, how do you manage that? Right? How are you working with kids one day and you're working on, proper defensive positioning and what to do with the cutoff man and all that, and then you're going back and just praying that they don't throw it out of the infield?
Well, I helped out on the 9 and 10-year-old team in the spring, and I coached the 11 and 12 because I had two boys 2 years apart, so they're in separate leagues. I guess the jump there, the bases are a little bit farther. The pitching mound's a little bit farther back, but I didn't think that was terrible. But I could not go back from the 11 and 12-year-olds and go back to 7 and 8 with the machine pitch. I just, you do it for 3 or 4 years and you are done. And it's not just the pain in the ass of hauling that machine around in the back of your car all the time, getting all that. Down here, we got all the red clay and red dirt that gets all over your car. So I don't miss that machine. I don't ever want to see it again. I don't even want to touch one again. But yeah, so anyway, life has definitely taken hold of the free time. And by the time I do have an hour free at night, I just want to collapse or melt on the couch, right? It's just the way it's been. So this has been the hardest year to keep up with this, for sure. And not to mention, my team was boring as shit to watch and terrible. That didn't help, for sure.
Yeah, honestly, I think that for me, I'm obviously not going to speak for you, but for me, I think that definitely played a huge role in it. Here we go, 3-2. That definitely played a huge role in that the Cubs for much of the season underperformed. Right, they got hot there in August, and that upped the interest level. But it's the same thing, right? How do you get motivated for a team that's not playing well?
Or how do you set your spare time, what little you do aside to follow as closely as we have, for years? It does become more of a challenge. You're like, hey, if I only have a few hours of free time on any given week, am I going to watch that? And based on the way they're playing, I couldn't sacrifice that. I mean, once in a while I have a game on in the background, but man, this has been, you talk about an experience, like to have 2 months there where you're playing for nothing. And, you get a chance to see some of the young guys come up and try to do something, but they weren't really in a position where they could play heavy spoiler or anything. So it was kind of tough to follow, tough to watch, tough to feel passionate about it this year. And I don't quite know what we're walking into in 2024.
I will tell you something interesting. Well, I don't know how interesting. It's interesting to me. An additional complication in being able to stay up to date on what's going on, right? And to be able to watch baseball and stuff, is, for a while there, I was dating, through much of the season. Yeah. And so, you're not gonna, be like, hey, can you hang on a second? I need to watch this game.
I need to read the game recap. So I know. Right. Yeah.
Right. And also to add on to that, there's definitely a different reaction nowadays to, oh yeah, my buddy and I do a baseball podcast than when we started this thing. Right? 7 years ago when I was like, yeah, my buddy and I do a baseball podcast. They're like, wait, you do what? Really?
It's not the first
What's
thing I
that
tell
like?
anybody.
How do you do that? And now everybody has a podcast.
Yeah.
And so it's not.
You have one too. Of course you do.
What do you talk about? What's the name of it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's about baseball. Never mind.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's not about
before it didn't matter what we were talking about. It was just, wait, you do a podcast? How do you do that?
No,
When
it
do you
was,
do, what do you guys talk about?
I think that, when we started doing this, inspiration for me, obviously I still listen to the guys over at Rebel Force Radio, and because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I want to, that's my, you don't have in your everyday life people that you can talk about with that kind of shit. So you might as well hear two regular people talk about it and talk about the news and things that are happening. So I still listen to that one. That was probably the one I like, hey, if these guys can do something interesting with a topic that, a lot of us find interesting, but a lot of people don't. I could probably come up with something. And then I heard a couple of baseball podcasts from amateurs at the time. And that was when it was like, oh shit. Well, we can do this a hell of a lot better, I think. But you're right though, when we did it, there weren't a slew of them. There were not a ton of them. In fact, I'm not suggesting at all that we spearheaded the live streaming thing, but we were doing that before a lot of baseball people or sports, novice amateurs were even thinking about doing it. We were doing it before those services like Be Live and what were some of the other ones? Like you tried another one called Riverside or something like that. Yep. Long before any of those services were around, we were actually doing that. Now it was wonky. It was, the one-man band on one end trying to operate every control and then host the show at the same time. So it sucked in its own way, but it was also interesting and it was fun because there weren't a ton of people doing it. But you're right. Once we start getting flooded and you feel like you're white noise out there, like it's not worth the pain in the neck anymore from a couple of guys who don't know what they're doing it from their damn phone when it took you 16 pieces of equipment and a bunch of knowledge you had to learn on the fly in order to just broadcast yourself. When people were able to start doing it from an app on a phone, I was kind of done with it at that point because I'm like, every slinging dick's going to come out here and, just flood everybody with, hey, I do a Cardinals podcast or I do a baseball podcast. But I think the real thing, Pete, is when the big names start jumping in the space, they just squeeze everybody out. Like what was available to you, what was appealing then is like, look, you can put your voice out there, potentially expose it to thousands of people because they want to hear fans or somebody like that talking about the sport they love or something they're interested in. But when you start getting flooded with, big names, like The Athletic has a podcast, the Post-Dispatch has one. And then you get radio shows that are syndicated in podcast form, right? Like you don't have to actually listen to live radio anymore. You can listen to the podcast version of that radio show later in the day or the next day. I just think the big names have probably drowned out a lot, not every one of them, but a lot of the fan made shows. And
yeah, I agree in a way.
So did I ever have aspirations we were going to be like the Joe Rogan of baseball talk for, Chicago and St. Louis area? No, I'm not being ridiculous, but I thought we'd carve out our own little niche. And I guess in a lot of ways we did. We had a weird kind of mini cult following from a few and that was fun. But we'll keep at it. But yeah, my expectations are this is a hobby and I do it in my spare time. I can talk to my friends on here and have a laugh or two every now and then. And that's what it's become. And I'm fine with that. Yeah. No more aspirations of this paying for itself anymore. I'm just paying for it anyway.
It's funny because we're kind of right back where we started, It was one of those things where we were just talking one night about baseball. I mean, it was right around this time of year and it was like, you know what? If we're going to be doing this anyway,
why don't just record it?
Yeah, let's just record it and throw it up on the internet.
But
Can't be that hard.
No, but I mean, we've had some good times on here when we've invited people on. I know we had Adam out in California on a few times. Those shows with him were fun, and we had a lot of other guests that would just pop in every now and then. But I still think that one of my favorite shows is obviously Mark Littell calling in unplanned. That was still one of my favorite memories of doing this. But I honestly, I think the times I've enjoyed it the most were just the times that just we were on, when Elliot was on, and we could just, be ourselves and not have to go to a script and not have to read off questions that we pre-planned, that we're just able to kind of just, be the dudes at the bar at the end of a work day talking about something we all agree that we like. We're not like the same people and the same teams, but at least we like the sport. And that to me is probably what's kept it going most, and having realistic expectations. And the other thing too is not starting off a show like we just started talking, because we know we've been talking for 15 minutes before we hit record. And I like the fact that we don't pretend and don't do how was your week, Pete? We might have done that in season 1 because we didn't know any better.
Right.
But we stopped doing bullshit like that. So I think that is another thing that, it's an evolution. You learn how to do that stuff. You learn what not to do. And I learned a lot of what not to do by our own fuck ups, but I've learned a lot of it from listening to other newer shows that come out that kind of, I think, make those mistakes.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's inevitable, right? Unless you're a professional broadcaster and you already have that experience. Mm-hmm. You have to find that out. And ultimately, I think really it comes down to listening to yourself, right? I think that we became better at this because we listened to ourselves. I know you don't do it anymore, but we listened to ourselves and figured out what worked for us and what didn't work,
Right. Yeah. Well, that's true. The other thing was probably not having 15 beers before you hit the record button was probably another lesson hard learned.
Yeah, that's probably a good strategy to take. Although sometimes, it adds to the mystique.
It does. And it definitely made some interesting moments. But Thursday night was my, you hear, the dads or grandpas had their bowling night. Yep. Where they went out with the guys. Yeah. And that's what Thursday night became for me.
Me too.
So it was like, let's hit it hard, but let's not try to hit it 6 hours before we hit record. That's a bad idea. For anybody thinking about starting out a show and you like the libations, I think you give yourself a good, maybe hour and a half window before you even start doing that, before you hit record. So you can be somewhat functional by the time you sit down and record. If I had to do an inventory of our shows, there'd probably be at least 30 of them I'd delete.
That's all?
Maybe more. Maybe my memory's not going back that far, but
I got to say, some of my favorite shows that we've done are, and I know that they're very small in number, just obviously because of the geographic realities. But some of my favorite ones are the ones where we've actually been able to sit down in front of each other.
Oh yeah.
And not have to look at each other through a screen,
Still odd.
It is.
That's a learning curve we have still yet to learn, is doing a podcast face to face. We still have that moment of, what? I can't just hit my mute button and you can't hear me anymore. I have to be somewhat on the game here, but I agree. I wish we could do that more often. That was I loved that you just stopped out here and you had a layover and we did a podcast during a layover. I think that's pretty cool. I wish we could do that stuff more often. I do think our shows would be a lot different had we been able to do those in person, but I think we've made the best of it. But a lot of people have to do that nowadays, right? That even professionals, even people that do this for a living, often don't. I mean, look at what was the MLB Network show with Chris Rose and that was, both those guys were remote. Intentional Talk. That was those guys weren't in the same place, same studio or everything, but they made it work. And I guess you got to, that's the way the world is. And I know over COVID, a lot of shows, a lot of professionals had to do that. I tell you what, man, I'd love to see the news and see people in studio a lot more than seeing some guy, in his home office on Fox or MSNBC or CNN, because that's what it is now. I mean, I think it's just easier to do. People learned how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody spent those dollars
I was going to say some guy in front of their bookcase, but I realized after the years, Pete has a bookcase behind him, and he looks like you could be on CNN right now.
I don't think they want to hear what I have to say. Hey, listen,
wrong outlet.
I was thinking about holding this out for Elliot to join us, but who knows if he will, or what kind of condition he'll be. Look, let's be honest, he's not joining us.
He's not going to join us, and we wouldn't even hear him. We'd hear whatever's in the background clanking around.
That's right. I have to say, let's credit where due. Elliot has done
he
a
tried
better
to call
job
in.
in general of
Yeah.
minimizing the background noises compared to when he first started.
I still wish he didn't try, because sometimes that's even better. But no, to give you credit, he was trying to call in to that last show where he went. I think it was in Atlanta. Yes. He was trying to call in. Of course, none of us were looking at our phones or paying attention. And like he was like, "Hey, you guys ready? Let's do this." And we were like talking and didn't even pay attention.
Yeah,
he was trying to join us, so I'd give him credit. We've got
credit for that.
We got Gino's been watching. He left some comments for us on Facebook. Mac McKinley, what up? What up?
Nice.
And I did see our old friend Greg Yackey.
He might be our number one fan right now.
He's got to be. You know, I think for longevity alone. I mean, not being part of all these groups anymore limits the exposure, so we don't get many viewers at any given time on Facebook. I haven't looked over at X, but unless you're saying so, unless I'm like showing my bare ass on camera, like you don't get pickups, right? You know, nobody's going to tune in to watch unless you're doing something extraordinarily or extreme or whatever. You don't have a fanatical following, and we're just not fanatical people.
No, we're not.
We're regular.
Well, sometimes we are.
Depends. I mean, we've had our moments. I could probably put a pretty entertaining viral hour out if I had the patience and the willingness to go through all of live streaming videos and clips and everything else and put out like a best of. But I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you remember a couple of years ago, I put out a couple of best ofs from I think it was from season 5, and that took a lot of time.
Like, it does, man.
Way more time than it deserved.
One, my hang up is I have to go back and listen to myself. Like that's the hardest part. Imagine how worse live streaming is for me. Like to go back to the videos. I'm like, hard enough listening to myself, watching myself talk at the same time is like a monumental task. All right, just a quick update here. We're in the 6th. 3-2 Diamondbacks. So this is we're starting to get into crunch time here.
It's getting late early.
It's either going to be a big key hit or a fuck up on defense is going to decide this game.
Yep. All right. So let me ask you something. And Gene, I will wear that jerk face comment with pride. Thank you very much, buddy. All right. So here's what I was going to ask you. We know Elliot's not going to show up. I'm sure he'll comment on this at some point. No, he won't, because he doesn't listen to the podcast either. And he doesn't even check out the comments on Facebook. So
Tommy Pham with an angry ground ball to shortstop.
And a really strong effort there running over to first base.
Oh, God.
All right. So here's the non-baseball question for you.
Yeah.
What do you make? What's your reaction to Matthew Vaughn's comments about rebooting Star Wars?
Well,
and look, let's not sell the guy short. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
This isn't some idiot with no experience, right? He's done a number of really good films. So he did Kick-Ass. Mm-hmm. Not my favorite film, but he did X-Men First Class. He directed Kingsman: The Secret Service. Like, he's done some entertaining films.
Kingsman's
asking
underrated
him about Star Wars is interesting.
Yeah. I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how Disney says that that's okay. We messed this up, so here you are in a multiverse path or something like that, right? I think it's going to be really hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube. I think it's going to be impossible. Like,
if they were to reboot it, would you go see the new Star Wars movie with 3 random actors? Go ahead, pick out your names, whoever you want it to be, playing Luke, Han, and Leia.
If they're gonna reboot anything, Pete, I'd rather see them move beyond that era. And here's where I'm coming from, right? Like, I was as excited as anybody to see the original 3 coming back in The Force Awakens in 2015. But they did what they did with those 3 movies. I know there were circumstances out of their control with the passing of Carrie Fisher after the second one. If they're going to reboot anything, I'd rather just see them move beyond that whole era. Go 100 years after it. Go 50 years after it. So all those characters are gone. So you can enjoy the legacy, I guess, in your head canon of where they left things off in, Return of the Jedi. I just don't think it's going to be possible to do. Hey, look, do I wish I could go back in a time machine and sit down and screen these 3 films with George Lucas and say, hey, you might want to think twice about selling this. This is what they're going to do. Yeah, of course. That's a fantasy, and we all daydream about shit all the time. I'd love to do that. And then I'd love to say, hey, I can make a better one. Pay me a couple million, I'll take it over. I'll run it for you. But I just don't think they can. Your question was, would I like to see them do that though? No, not at this point. I just don't think I don't think it's going to be possible.
Yeah, I'm in the same place, and I don't understand. I don't understand our culture's inability to tell a story and then to walk away from it. We can't do that anymore, right?
No, everybody has to be resurrected. Nobody dies.
That's right. You don't get a one-off of a movie. If a movie or a book or whatever does really well, when's the sequel? When's the follow-up? Mm-hmm. When's the next one?
It's got to be a franchise, right? Or it doesn't count.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And have we tapped everything out of the franchise? That's okay. We're going to reboot it. New actors, new stories, new directors, and all of a sudden, and we're going to pretend like it never happened. The Skywalker saga has been told.
Yeah.
In 6 films. Walk away. Let the story be told. Go find another story to tell.
Yeah.
If you want to set it in the same universe, that's fine. But walk away. Leave it alone.
I'd say it right now. It was told in 9, although I wish they wouldn't have done the last 3. But Skywalker saga, I guess, if you want to call it that. You're right, Pete. I mean, realistically, if you follow the story, it really was 6 chapters, and they were told. They added 3 more. They didn't do them well, but it's 9 chapters. Whatever. I don't know. Could fill up a whole show with my issues on what they could have done differently and what they should have done differently. And I would be willing to bet in a lot of ways that some of those creators wish they had more time to make different decisions than they, did. Because they were under the gun. And that was, I look at Iger and Disney's timeline. They threw on everything. They paid $4.2 billion or something. They wanted to start getting a return on that sooner than later, right? And it came at the sacrifice of a quality story.
And ultimately, it came at the sacrifice of their long-term financial prospects. Had they done it right, had they taken more time? Mm-hmm. It's funny because we always look back and we were frustrated by the fact that it took George Lucas 3 years to turn out another chapter every time that he was telling the story. Maybe there was a little something to that, right? There was the same extended timeline with Lucas and Spielberg telling the Indiana Jones story, right? You had multiple years in between films. Maybe there's something to be said for not constantly churning out content, because you've seen diminishing returns, and it's not exclusive. It's not exclusive to Star Wars, right? You're starting to see it now in Marvel. For Marvel, you're seeing it in a lot of other franchises. You're seeing it in the Harry Potter franchise, right? And I would not be surprised if you're going to see it with the whole what is it? The one that had Jennifer Lawrence in it. I'm getting goddamn old.
The Hunger Games.
Yeah, Hunger Games. Thank you. They're coming out with a prequel in the next month or so, and I guarantee you that's gonna disappoint as well. And it's like, take your time, tell a good story, and then once your story's done, walk away.
Yeah, I agree with you. We just don't see those anymore, right? I'm waiting for the Goonies sequel.
Hey, did you see The Creator?
No, but I want to. I've seen the trailer for it. It looks good. That's Gareth Edwards, right?
It was Gareth Edwards. Very entertaining. Pretty unique story. And yet at the end, I walked out and I was like, please don't. Please just let this be a one-off. because inevitably, and I'm not saying necessarily that it wasn't already written this way, that the ending wasn't, I'm not saying the ending was forced on him by the studio, but
yeah,
there's an ending that could be ambiguous and could lead to a second film. And I just don't want it because you told a good story, leave it alone.
And if you get it, you would hope that, hey, look, what made the first one its thing? Like, what made it that way?
Right.
And, I guess don't necessarily go out and try to top it, but think it through and don't rush it. Don't miss obvious things like not making the First Order Stormtrooper clones after they stole all the clone technology, that kind of thing, right? Like, don't make stupid mistakes like that. Yeah, you got me stuck in this hamster wheel now of issues I've had with the sequel trilogy. And I'll go back to it. I know that we're watching a baseball game here, so we've lost people, but one of the biggest issues I have, one of the biggest flubs, one of the biggest, most, in my mind at least, one of the most obvious things that was missed in this whole sequel chapter was, okay, a new empire has risen, right? Looks the same, like similar, white armored bad guys. And your whole prequel trilogy dealt with all of this cloning technology. That's how you raise an army really quick. No, let's not do that because that was prequel stuff and it's icky, right? Remember, it was icky in 2012 to 2015, according to Disney. They did away with all the Clone Wars shit, right? Canceled the series. We're far away from it as possible. Not making those people clones, or at least like think of like Battlestar Galactica. All the bad guys in there, they were built off 7 people. Like there were duplicates of 7 different people, but a lot of them, right? At least the latest Battlestar Galactica, not the one from the 80s. Like to not even do something like that, like clone off 7 different people rather than just one, but to not make them clones at all, to not kind of somehow that tie back to the prequels. No, you stole billions of babies to make your army. Nobody in the fucking galaxy noticed. Pete, it's stuff like that is a fully formed human being adult that you can't recognize. It sounds really stupid. Is what just flabbergasted me about this whole think tank behind the sequel trilogy. Like, how could you miss something that was so obvious like that? That would have explained a lot of shit, and it wouldn't have made you wonder, how could that force have been built up that quick? Well, duh, we've seen a force get built up that quick in the prequel trilogy, but that was from George, and he was bad. Like,
well, and contrast that, right? The difference of one man telling a story, and having other people then weigh in with stuff, but still, ultimately it being one man's vision versus essentially a committee.
Or a group
deciding what story they were going to tell.
It fell victim to group tank and executives at Disney that probably should have stayed out of the creative process altogether.
Yep.
Yeah. Disaster. So do I want to see it rebooted? Yeah. You know what? In a fantasy realm of mine, sure. And if they did, Pete, if they decided they were going to reboot that part of the story, I'd probably be in line to see it. Would it mean as much to me as the first time I stood in line waiting for The Force Awakens? No.
Nope.
Because that's already happened.
Right.
That's not gonna leave the brain. None of it is. I enjoyed parts of all of those movies. It got fewer and fewer parts as we went through the sequel trilogy, but there are parts of them I enjoy. They're gonna have to stick with that storyline, and I would like to see them stop going back in the past. And I'd like to see them start pushing it forward beyond all of this shit. That's this Old Republic thing or whatever, this Origin of the Jedi movie that's eventually going to be made. Great. Okay. I don't necessarily need that. I don't know if I want that. And I don't need it to tie into anything 100 years after the sequel trilogy. Like, I just want them to push things forward for a new story, a whole new thing going on, right? Other thing. How inept is the fucking New Republic? Like, they went through all of this galactic civil war with the Empire to get things back. And they are terrible. And you didn't see Mandalorian Season 3 or Ahsoka, Pete, but you'd be shaking your head going, how can this be just as bad as it was in the prequel trilogy with the New Republic and the bureaucracy and everything else? Like, how could things go back to that?
And since you mentioned that again, that leads back to the dangers of trying to continue to tell a story when it's done, right? Is that the longer that you drag it out, the longer you extend it, the more you have to remember that has already been established.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, I mean, it's kind of like, what do they always say? Tell the truth. It's much easier to remember a truth than a lie. Right. And so the more shit that you have to make up when you're telling a story, the more that you have to remember that you made up. And eventually you're going to end up either contradicting yourself or you're going to make the stuff that was there previously look ridiculous. And that's
you're going
exactly
to retcon it by accident. It's all a mental inventory. And the more you try to make shit up, the harder and harder and harder it's going to get to make it make sense at the end of the day.
I think the one thing that they have done more than anything, I mean, just from a fan standpoint, blowing the opportunity to have the original 3 on screen together one more time. That's not the thing that has offended me the most. The thing that has really soured me to Disney Star Wars the most is the fact that the most elegant and the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy has been reduced to, a thumbtack, right? You can take a gut shot from a lightsaber now and survive it.
Qui-Gon couldn't.
Qui-Gon couldn't.
Yeah.
And at the time, you might have argued that he was one of the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy at the time.
Yeah.
He couldn't take a gut shot. But, these untrained Sith and Jedi, they can take gut shots and survive.
Yeah. No.
You've reduced the effectiveness. You've robbed the lightsaber of its effectiveness and its mystique. And so it's just a light sword. That's all.
Or as George would say, laser sword.
Just a laser sword. That's all.
Yeah.
It's definitely slower and less intense now.
It is less intense, although they've tried to up the game. I know you've missed out on the last couple of series, but there were moments in the Ahsoka series that I thought were done well. And at least in that series, it did come from what we know of. It did come from Filoni's mind, who I still go back and look at all the things that were done since the Disney acquisition. I'd have to say that the way they ended Clone Wars after they were given permission to, I think was done extremely well. I still, the storyline behind Rebels is still one of my favorite. Although there was some goofy ass shit going on there that I could have done without. But I think the Rebel storyline in general was pretty good. And I think that added to the whole mythology of Star Wars. I don't think it took away from it.
Goofy ass shit. Are you talking about something like, say...
Yeah.
That guy, yeah, that was a little weird. I think the 4 episodes on astromech droids was probably 3 too many.
Maybe 3.5.
But yeah, maybe. But I think overall, like his take on this, being mentored by George, I think he did pretty well in the Ahsoka show. It wasn't perfect, but it is one of the better things I think they've produced.
Interesting to think what could have been if Disney could get over their pettiness and allow George to be a part of it, right? Because that Filoni was dying to have George on the phone every step of the way. I know that there were rumors that George came in a couple of times and was on set, but I mean, come on, it's not the same as. So George, this is the story I'm thinking of. What do you think?
Well, none of us know the guy personally, but I would have to think that Dave still has a pretty regular dialogue with that guy on a lot of topics that involve his work. I'm not saying George has influenced his work. Well, of course he's influenced his work, but I'm talking about like decisions that are made real time today. I don't know how much influence he has over that, but you can kind of clearly tell where George has a voice and where he doesn't on some of these shows. Like take the Obi-Wan series, for instance, Boba Fett. you can tell he wasn't involved in that at all, right? Had
No, not a bit.
And you see the difference of a show like even Rogue One or Ahsoka, which look and feel different, and they kind of like they fit within that storytelling method. Like they fit better, and they make sense, and they feel like they belong in Star Wars. Whereas Boba Fett, like I don't know. Let's not even go off on Boba Fett because I think that was probably, in my opinion, the worst show they did. There were certainly parts of Obi-Wan that were cringeworthy, but there were parts of Obi-Wan I really enjoyed. The Andor series is clearly like void of George Lucas influence, although it was ended up I enjoyed it. It's good. But you can clearly tell where he has influence and where he doesn't. Now, whether he's trying to or not. You can definitely tell. But yeah, going back to your original question though, would I like to see it rebooted? Yeah, but I'd also like a time machine to make sure that the sequel trilogy probably didn't happen the way it did.
Yeah, I agree.
So
if there was one thing, right? Like if I absolutely could not dissuade George from selling, right? He can't be talked out of it. The one thing I would do, George, please do not. You cannot put Kathy in charge. She does not know what she's doing. Mm-hmm. You're going to regret that more than you're going to regret selling Star Wars.
While that may be true, I
do not make that a condition of the sale.
Here's the thing. I don't know how much of it to hang on her. Like, I just don't know. Like, I know we can speculate because she's the head of all of it. So we kind of look in that direction and say, your fault. Kind of like you would an owner of a team, right? So sure, she's got some of it. I just don't know how much. I don't know how much to hang on her. I don't know how much pressure she had from, corporate Disney once they stepped in and took over. I just don't know. She's been a hell of a producer throughout her career. She's got tons of, projects that were like all-time grossing films, under her belt as far as being a producer, but maybe that's all she should have been. Having influence over the creative side, storytelling, who to cast. It leaves you wondering, like, how much do you hang on her? I just don't know. I really don't. I'm not inside, so I don't know what to.
Well, I think if you look at her public statements about the direction that Star Wars was going to go, and you either had two things happen, right? That some of the things that she said were going to happen did and ultimately didn't work out, or the other end. And I think that this really does indict her ability as a creative head, are the number of projects that she announced and either they got canceled completely, they've been shelved, or they had their directors fired. I mean, with the exception of the big three, everything that every film that they have announced has had at least one change.
That has been
of director.
Yeah, that has been one thing, and maybe you just don't hear about
and
it.
And that's a bad indicator. That falls entirely on her.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but here's the thing: like, my knowledge is limited on this stuff. I don't know how common or uncommon that stuff is.
It's very uncommon.
Yeah,
once you sign somebody up as director, they see the project through to the end. Now, whether or not you actually, if you're not happy with the project, then you just put it into storage and you never release it. That's your prerogative as the studio.
But it seems like things they announce versus what actually sees the light of day is like 2 out of 3 fail.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just getting out too far out ahead of it and announcing things too soon, and without knowing what the scope of that project is, what the hey, what's the direction that project's heading. If it's just like, let me throw one out there, like this Rogue Squadron or whatever Patty Jenkins was gonna direct and create. What happened with that? Like, is it really just you announce the idea of something without fleshing it out?
And that's what it sounds like, right? That's what it sounds like. So in my experience, unless you have somebody who is really fired up about it and maybe attached not only as a director, but also as the writer, you typically don't start making massive decisions on films over a treatment, right? And a treatment is essentially a one-page synopsis of where the story is going. And that's really what they had with Patty Jenkins and Rogue Squadron, was they had a treatment.
Yeah, which is amazing to me. I think the error is
and
like
they ran with that.
announcing these things, right? Like,
right. Usually you wait to announce that kind of stuff and to nail down a director and everybody until you have a script that you're pretty darn happy with and that you're ready to start moving towards production. You're ready to start shooting. You're ready to start casting people. Well, but you don't make big enough. You may make an announcement that you have, a director and a writer attached to a story, especially if it's adapted from something, right? Where you announce that, Ron Nuttall is going to helm a project with that's going to be scripted by Elliot Dewey, based on an adaptation.
No. First of all, you're
based on an adaptation of the book by David Ross about leadership, his book Teammate. Right? You may announce that in the trades, but you're not going to go up on stage and announce that Ron Nuttall is going to be directing the movie about David Ross's baseball career.
I'm wondering too, the learning curve that Lucasfilm has had to go through, being a privately held company, to where things were not going to, George wasn't going to announce anything without, and to all of a sudden going to a publicly held company where you're talking to stockholders, shareholders, you have to make them feel good about where they're putting their money.
Right.
And they haven't handled it too well. By the way, for those of you that wanted to hear about baseball, it's 4-2.
Yeah.
Diamondbacks.
Corbin Carroll is dominating this game tonight.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to the moment at hand. That's what, his third or fourth hit tonight, second or third run scored. I mean, he is, we already knew he was going to be NL Rookie of the Year, but he's putting on an impressive performance here in Game 7.
Tell you what, being down 3-2, going to Philadelphia with the prospect of taking the Phillies out 2 games at their home field, which is supposed to be
as hot as their 1, 2, and 3 hitters have been up through Game 5, impressive.
Yeah, really
impressive that the way that the Diamondbacks have held on here.
And they're going through a pitching change now, so it looks like they're bringing in Zach Wheeler. So,
yep. Well, all hands on deck, right?
Yep. Game 7, you got to do it, right? There is no tomorrow. Right. But yeah, part of me, Pete's wondering if it's just their adjustment going through being privately held to now publicly. And you've got, investor calls that you have to jump onto. You've got, board of directors you have to report to, and they have to feel good about what you're doing. So you got to give them enough to keep them away from you, right? You have to give the investors enough to get them to shut up so they'll keep their money with you. You have to give the board of directors enough so they stay out of your business, right? So they've announced all these projects, these slew of things. Like, look, the slate looks great. Look at all this stuff coming up. To only have reality hit them in the face a year or two later that this project isn't right. This creative person we brought in to do this is way off what we want to do, where we want to take things, and I think that's what they've run into. It feels like that to me, right? And I come from the business environment too, and I understand you got to show a roadmap for products and things you're going to do, and some of them may never see the light of day. Some of those are put on there to, like, hey, look, in 5 years we're going to do something that has to do with this. And you put a number to it. It just feels like the same thing that happened.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think that's a fair point, Ron. Yeah. Is that you're right. There is an expectation that you do announce these projects to your investors because you want to give them confidence in your organization's future. So that you're right, so that they stay invested with you. But the movie business is, by definition, a far more public and more highly scrutinized industry.
Yeah. But George's take on this was, I don't give a shit what anybody else wants. Like, this is my story to tell. It's my universe. I'm going to announce things when I have thought them through, when they're fully baked. At least the ideas are. Maybe not the details, but the ideas are fully baked. And I'll give it to you when I'm ready to give it to you. And he didn't have anybody to report to.
And you know what has changed about the movie industry since George was doing that, right? Is that everything has become vertically integrated. It used to be that the studios just produced content. That was it. Mm-hmm. And then they had to enter into contracts with distributors. They had to enter into contracts with movie theaters, right? And so there were 2 or 3 steps down the line. So all the studios had to be concerned with was producing an actual film. And that's all George had to worry about. Well, now all of the studios have brought everything under their umbrella. And so they're now concerned with everything from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And so they're the ones who are doing the distribution. They're the ones who are doing the marketing and everything. And so there's a whole heck of a lot more on the line.
And with Disney, you throw theme parks on top of that and everything else, right? Yep. Like, so, but it's what it feels like to me, Pete. If if I were to work for a privately held company with one owner or a very small group of owners, what I'm going to be announcing that's going to happen 5 years from now is going to look very different than when I have to tell shareholders that, right? So I think
especially because it's going to be a very closely held conversation. You're not going to be announcing it to the public.
And they haven't figured out the way to do that effectively. When they could have turned over 5 ideas over 5 years that would have made sense to investors, they decided to go ahead and throw 12 out there. Right. So I think that's why you see the attrition, the fall off happen like the way it is. They haven't vetted these things out yet. One, they haven't vetted out the ideas. You're right. They don't know the script. They don't know where the story's going. They don't know if it fits in whatever strategy they have to propel the whole franchise forward. It's just, they haven't figured out how to bring these things to the public eye. Well, let me put it this way. They haven't built their muscle yet to know what to vet out before they go announcing it publicly. They just know they got to throw shit out there.
And now it's coming back to bite them because now they're starting to get a group of investors who are getting antsy. And it's gotten to the point now where there's this activist investor, Nelson Peltz, who's bought up a pretty significant stake in Disney, and he wants board seats. And one of his stated goals is to remove Bob Iger, because he doesn't like the direction that Disney's going. Yeah. And he's gotten to the point where he has enough shares to where he may be able to actually effectuate that change. Yeah. But you're not in that situation if you're not announcing 12 projects that either underperform or never come to market.
And you've already seen the quantity versus quality equation play out with Disney, right? Like all the quantity. And the thing is, it's been very, very hit miss on what's quality or not. In a lot of ways you can say.
And it's not unique to Star Wars. It's across the board with Disney.
Yeah. I mean, look at DC, for instance, right? I mean, I tell you what, like, I think they've messed up the Star Wars franchise in some ways, but man, they have not botched it as much as Warner Brothers has on DC. That's been a collapse.
Yeah, it's clear that the superhero moment has passed.
I think it's fatigue, right? Like even the spinoff shows that they have on Disney Plus on Marvel aren't doing well. It's just they don't, like, we kind of know, right? I don't need, like, the Loki show has been somewhat interesting, but that what was that one that Samuel L. Jackson was in, the Secret Invasion or Secret War or something like that? Like,
yeah, I heard that was pretty terrible.
That was pretty terrible. So yeah, the whole WandaVision was interesting too until they took it out of black and white and got it real. I actually liked it more when it was, like a 1950s sitcom. Yep. So yeah, I do think the superhero movie fatigue has started to set in. So bad time for DC to reboot. I think they had plenty of opportunities to get it somewhat right, and they just couldn't do it.
Yep. I mean, and it goes back to the beginning of this conversation. Once you've told your story, just walk away.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference with some of these comic book things, right? I think people have accepted, like, there have been, I'm not a comic book guy at all. There have been different iterations of Batman. There have been different iterations of Superman and even Spider-Man where, they can be resurrected and brought back in a different way. And I think in the comic book genre, that's kind of been a known thing anyway. So you can do it, but I think the point you made was superhero movies have kind of run their course, and I do think they need to cool off on it for a while because I'm not as interested anymore to watch the latest Black Adam iteration.
Right. It'll be interesting to see whenever they manage to settle this actor strike. Be interesting to see what kind of content comes out of Hollywood, because it's going to be a while, right? They're going to be. I think we're going to be seeing some really bad stuff
Well, we are
over the next 12 to 18 months, right? Because they're just going to be
Yeah.
pulling whatever they have off the shelf.
And you're right. And I was wondering about that too. I'm like, there is going to be a serious drought coming up of content, like original, like stuff being brought to the public because they have gone through the writer's strike. And that sets things back a long time. You don't think 6 months feels like a long time? Wait till you don't have a new show for 6 months of something you expected to start in spring and it ain't starting in spring.
Especially when, as a writer, you're not supposed to pick up that pen.
No.
You had a great idea. Okay. I hope you can remember it when this thing's over because you're not supposed to make notes.
Yeah. Well, let's be real. A lot of them are probably making notes, but they're also like finding other things to do with their time. They're not writing scripts right now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be a while before they get that content machine cranked back up. I'll be interested to see, if they try and go back to, what hasn't been working for the last several years, or if they, try something. Maybe we'll get some comedies back in theaters. I'd love to be able to go back to a theater and laugh with a crowd. It's been a while since I've done that.
It has. My wife and I watched that No Hard Feelings. I think Jennifer Lawrence movie. And it wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be, but that was like the closest thing that I've had in a while.
Did you watch it in a theater or did you watch it at home?
I watched it at home.
Okay. See, and that's what I wonder is, look, we know this, right? Laughter is infectious. It's a lot funnier. It's a lot funnier laughing with 50 people at the same thing than it is by yourself. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love it if we could get some comedies back in theater that just have people rolling because it just becomes that much funnier.
Yeah, I know. The problem with those comedies that you're thinking about, like, I don't know if they fly these days, but I hope it comes back, right? Like, I would love to see things like Step Brothers or Animal House or, even a lot of the Adam Sandler movies that, probably wouldn't be able to be made these days. Not to mention Tropic Thunder. So I don't know what kind of comedies are going to end up coming back, but man, they just don't make them like they used to, right?
No, they definitely don't.
Revenge of the Nerds, Police Academy. Shit would never be made these days.
Right. Look, I know he's a good hitter and everything, but could this guy please take a shower?
Or just not try to mimic Charlie Blackmon?
It's the greasy hair that just if he wants, long unkempt hair and beard, that's fine. But like, he's got those two greasy tails hanging down on the side. It just, come on.
I don't know if it's pine tar. Maybe it's extra pine tar.
So he's putting it on his bat and then whatever's left, he just kind of
just puts in the locks, I guess.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. Interesting that John Jaso, you remember him, right? Played for the Pirates for a while.
Yeah,
he had the dreadlocks. White guy with the dreadlocks. Right. It was weird. It was like just a look you wouldn't expected. But I guess he had a short playing career, but he literally spends 6 months on a sailboat with his girlfriend every year. Like he just sails. Goes anywhere around the Caribbean or wherever he goes. I don't know, but that's like his lifestyle now, and I don't know what he does when he comes back to the mainland, but if he runs camps or a gym or training facility or something like that. But yeah, he looked like a pirate when he played, like literally. Not only did he play for the Pirates, he actually looked like one, and that's what he does in his spare time. I think it's pretty cool.
That is. Well, I told you about my buddy Len, who he and his wife and kids, they sold almost everything, put what remained into storage, and then sailed around on a 50-foot catamaran around the Caribbean and started out into the Pacific for like 2 years.
I'd be too scared. I mean, yeah, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, he and I had dinner a couple months ago, and I asked him about that. I was like, "So, how did that work? Like at night?" And he's like, "Well, you split the night up into a watch. One of you goes and gets some sleep. The other one, you literally chain yourself. I mean, it's not a chain, but there's a safety leash. You literally leash yourself to the boat, and then you just kind of ride."
Wow. Yeah. No, can't imagine that.
I know, right? Just in total darkness.
No. Out in the middle of the ocean.
In the middle of the ocean, the only thing you see is the sea, or is the stars.
I think
that's it.
If it were just me and adults, I could see doing that for a month or two. Having young kids,
but knowing that your 3 kids are with you
would be really, really hard. Like I'd be the one who goes right into the heart of a storm. So,
well, that's what ultimately. So they were gonna. I don't know if I've told you this story. So they were gonna. Their intention was to sail, at least to Australia. I mean,
yeah.
Ostensibly to sail around the world, but it can be a pretty treacherous journey from Perth to the Suez Canal. The Indian Ocean is by far the most dangerous ocean on Earth, and there are literally pirates off the Horn of Africa.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult to get to the safety of the Suez Canal. But they had a plan to do that, and they were, I think they were less than a week out of the Panama Canal, and his wife was on night watch, and she woke him up one night, mast snapped.
Oh.
So they literally had to turn around and motor back into Panama the whole way. They had no sail.
Not only no sail, but just being out on that water like that if you run into the wrong weather system, like I with having young kids on, I don't know how they did it for as long as they did, but I couldn't do it for a week. I couldn't do it for 2 hours.
Obviously a big part of it was that since they were in the Caribbean and they were island hopping, so it's not like they were out in the middle of the ocean for days at a time. But still, you're right. I mean, he told me there were days where that what they were eating was what they had stocked, what provisions they had stocked up on their last port call, and then whatever he was able to catch off the back of the boat.
No. Pass. Hard pass. I respect it. I admire it. I'd like to watch the movie, but nope, I will not do it.
Well, if you'd like to watch the movie, I'll be sure to send you the link. They documented it.
Did they?
Like 70 chapters or so on YouTube of their journeys.
No, I'll limit my exposure to that.
All right, so here we are, bottom of the 7th. Christian Pache on first, and Kyle Schwarber, Adam Dunn of our day. So, I mean, with a 3-2 count, one of the 3 true outcomes is going to happen here, right? He's going to strike out, he's going to walk, or he's going to hit a home run, because that's what Kyle Schwarber does.
Well, it's a full count.
It is. That's why I said one of the 3 true outcomes is going to happen here.
Watch this one. I'll have to take a brief pause unless we want to just walk away, or do we want to stick it out?
I mean, it's already at the bottom of the 7th.
2 more innings, I think we can do it.
Yeah, it's probably another hour.
Well, there's one of your outcomes.
There it is.
Yeah.
There's your outcome.
And that wasn't a pitch he could have swung at. Thing was in the dirt.
That's right.
Because trust me, if it would have been 6 inches above the ground, that dude he's either golfing that over the left center field fence, or he's gonna whiff.
And credit where due. It's not that Kyle Schwarber doesn't know the strike zone, but he also knows what pitches out of the strike zone he can do damage with.
Well, I wonder if you asked him to his mental approach when he is up. I mean, guys that have big swings like that, but they also have swing and miss capability, right? Hitters.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not taking the mental approach, I'm going up there swinging until the pitch proves I can't swing at it.
Yeah, I think so. I think his swing thought is do damage.
I am swinging until I determine that I can't hit that. And so he's always in that mode. I think a lot of guys are, if you ask them, like they're probably like, I am going up there with the intention of swinging until that pitch proves it's not hittable. You got to think he's like that.
And he doesn't strike me as a guy who is going up there with the intent of ever during his at bat of, okay, plan B, I'm just going to make contact.
No.
He may look like that was what he was doing, but that's because he got fooled. It wasn't his intention, right? He didn't shorten his swing in order to get on base. He took a bad swing.
Yeah.
And he managed to, squib it out into left field and get on.
Well, some guys are just not like that, right? They're not whatever I have to do, I'm just going to get on base. I'm just going to get on base. That's what I need to do. A player like him is not doing that. Like I'm going to I'm going to fly out of my shoes until I determine that, no, that's not a hittable pitch. Purely guess. None of us know Kyle Schwarber. I'm just guessing. I'm guessing a lot of these feast or famine guys are probably up there with that mindset.
Well, look, you don't get to be the last Jedi any other way.
I guess, you know what? I've always said that was a terrible comparison. It might be accurate. Because the way Star Wars has been pumping shit out, it is hit or miss. All right. I'm going to take a brief pause. I can take you off camera if you'd like. And,
me too.
I guess, you know what?
Stick with us, though.
Yep. We'll be right back.
Yep.
Uh-oh. We got something brewing, or is that the end of the inning?
End of the inning.
End of the inning. All right. So we're back. Sorry about that. We had to take a little break. Like a biological break and a
Hey, get something to drink. Not used to talking this much.
I am not. You know what? I've done a little taste test tonight. So I've had Don Julio White tequila, and I found a bottle of Cabo Wabo Blanco because you can't find it for some reason in Charlotte.
Cabo Wabo.
It's like Sammy Hagar's tequila, right?
Yep, that's right.
That but I'm just curious, right? They're a difference in price by quite a bit, but I wanted to compare the two. And I got to tell you, I kind of prefer the Cabo Wabo. It's got like more of a, might sound weird, but it's like more of like a grilled vegetable kind of like you grill asparagus or something. You got the very burnt edges of the vegetable. It's kind of, it has a little bit of that kind of taste to it. I kind of like it actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. Who knew?
When did you become a tequila man?
Just trying different things, man. I've kind of, beer used to be my go-to thing, man. I can't tell you when the last time I actually had a beer.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a while. Just can't, I can't do them like I used to. I've tried, going the, I guess the lower calorie, lower carb type of thing. Cause as you get our age, well, maybe not you, you're like 7 feet tall. So, but for me being exactly 6 foot, 5 pounds, 10 pounds looks a lot different on me than it does you. So
I got to tell you something. Speaking of age.
Yeah.
So this morning, our morning basketball crew got out on the floor. A little different than our normal schedule. Normally we play Wednesday, Friday, but we have parent-teacher conferences this week, and so everybody, well, our staff anyway, will have the day off on Friday. Mm-hmm. And so I know there's no way we're going to be able to get enough people to play on Friday. So as the morning basketball commissioner, I made the executive decision that we were going to play Tuesday, Thursday. Anyway. Yeah. We get out there today. There are 9 of us. And as we're just about to start, I'm looking around on the floor. And for, I think, the first time ever.
Shortest guy?
I'm the oldest guy.
Oldest guy.
And it's not close.
Yeah. It's like that at work for me too.
I'm fairly certain. I'm kind of going around the room. Mm-hmm. There might have been one guy whose age started with a 4.
It was the guy cleaning the floor.
That's it. A lot of 20s and 30s. And the old man over here working on his second half century.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and by the way, happy late birthday. I think
thanks, buddy.
Everybody missed that. I know I talked to you about it when you were out here. Well, I talked to you when you were out here. I'm like, so how you feeling about it? And you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, I really don't.
Okay.
And nobody else does either, because the and I'm not bitter about it. It's just interesting, right? Like 10 years ago when I turned 40, it was a big deal, right? There was, now obviously my life circumstances were different, but still when I turned 40, there was a little bit more hue and cry. Yeah. This time,
I wonder how much of that
response was much more muted.
I wonder how much of that though is, when it's somebody's big, it's a big year, right? 50 is. I wonder how much of it though is like, does that person really want to hear happy birthday on a 50th or?
Oh, no. People just forgot. Because I know they did, because they like got back to me days later and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I missed your birthday. Right.
Well, I knew you had it coming up when you were out here. Cause I know I'd mentioned it to you, but I'm like, oh, okay. He looks like he actually doesn't care.
Yeah. Really don't.
Okay.
Doesn't bother me. And it's funny too, because I have a really good friend who's literally like 7 or 8 days younger than me. And when I went up to her on her birthday and I was like, happy birthday, lady, welcome to 50. And she was like, don't shut up. Don't say it. Right. So it clearly was bothering her, much more than it bothered me. So,
well, I know that, 40, I didn't even think twice about. I don't know. I'm 2 years away from it. So we'll see how I feel. I'll probably be in the same boat as you. At this point, I don't care. Kids have worn me down so much. I'm so tenderized that I can't even process it. But yeah, so you had a big day. That's a big year. But
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be bothering you. It hasn't slowed you down. You're still playing basketball with 20 and 30-year-olds.
that's right. And I'm still walking. I haven't and I'm gonna.
Isn't it amazing?
I know it's gonna happen. I haven't twisted an ankle in like 5 or 6 years.
But
I'm on a good run.
There are people, Pete, that I got to say, like you've aged pretty well, even since I've known you, right? And it's been a while now. And I in a lot of ways, I feel the same way about myself. I had, knock on wood, right? Just like you did. But it is funny in life how I've just, like, there are people that just seem like they can't get to being old fast enough. Like, I swear I've met people that just cannot wait to get that cane. I don't know if it's for attention or what the hell it's for, but there are just some people that just seem hell bent. Like, nah, I'm looking forward to being old and being taken care of. And I'm like, wow, and they're like our age. I'm like, why? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. I'm glad I haven't ended up that way.
I think there's a certain degree of for some of them, I think there's some sympathy to it, right? That they want to be, they want to earn a little bit of slack for themselves. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy I work with, and anybody who works with me will know is exactly who I'm talking about as I tell this story. But for years, right? He's had black hair, right?
Yeah,
and not even really gray, black hair. And also, how do I put this kindly? Not the most motivated guy in the world.
Yeah.
But makes 6 figures at the school.
Yeah.
And the comment of everybody is, how the hell do I get that job? Because he doesn't do shit. When he does get asked to do a project, all he does is complain and try to find a way out of it. And he still manages to get paid that. And I don't think he does it anymore, but for a number of years, once baseball season started, he was a vendor at both parks. So he would not stay late for events because he was off selling beer at Comiskey or at Wrigley.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it quickly became clear that he had been dyeing his hair for years because since 2020, he has had white hair. And to bring it all back around, I think part of it is to get people off his ass so that he doesn't have to work hard, right? Is it, oh no, I'm old. I'm almost retired. You might as well just leave me alone, not get on my ass. Let me collect my paychecks and I'll be out of your hair soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's a strategy. That's one way you can do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I've known like a good amount of people. It just feels like they want to be old quick. And
yeah.
Okay, go ahead and have those body parts replaced if you think you need that. I realize some of it's genuine. Some of it is genuine health related stuff and nobody can do anything about it. Others I look at and I'm like,
hey, you talking about me?
I think a lot of it was a choice.
You talking about me because, I mean, I got my necklace and I'll sell you a maintenance agreement on my hip.
That was a little sympathy. That was a sympathy sale.
Oh, every time.
Yeah.
Every time. You could tell when he wasn't, when the sale wasn't going well, that limp got worse.
Or better.
Right. Right. If it was going well, that boy, he could move. He could move around that department. I'm going to go get you that. I'm going to go get you that paperwork right now.
Yeah.
But boy, if it wasn't going well, he leaned into that hip.
Yeah.
Or if he didn't want to have to walk over and sell that $100 stereo.
No, he was happy to let you and Mitesh do it.
That's right.
Yeah. Good old techno Jesus, man. He was a character. I wonder what's become of old Mr. Miller. Let's leave it at that.
I'm sure Fish knows.
Yeah, I'm sure he does too. But I don't want to speak ill of anybody if they're not with us anymore. And I don't know.
That's right.
One way or the other. I mean, based on the way that hip was going, man, he could be in a hover round right now. Best case.
Speaking of Miller, did you ever work with the other Miller?
No. I heard the name, but no, I didn't. I missed out.
Good guy. Fun to be around. Boy, he had problems.
We had several of us had a lot of problems from that crew. All of us did.
Yeah. All right, so top 8. Diamondbacks have a man on second, 2 outs.
They might hold on and do this thing, man. I wonder who's going to be pitching the late innings here. Can they, obviously they got, I think, a veteran or 2 out in that pen, but I wonder who they're going to put out there, and can they hold it down? I mean, you can see, like, just look at the guy on the side of the rail. Like, he's anxious as shit right now, right? I don't know who that is.
Me either. Is that Fat?
Might be
the guy who started.
I think you're right.
For the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I think it is.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, this is the dream scenario that Rob Manfred was looking for at the beginning of the season, to have the Diamondbacks and the Rangers facing off in the World Series.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Although I credit where due. And, I'll admit I was optimistic at the beginning of the year. I think we all were. But I think for the most part, the new rules that they implemented this year have gone pretty darn well. They've had the exact effect that they wanted.
Games were absolutely shorter. You could feel it. You would, if you took a break from a game, midway through and you came back, you're like, Jesus Christ, started the 7th inning.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think and
also the games have been more interesting, like way more traffic on the bases with the larger bases and the limited number of throws over to first. I think that's been great. It's nice to see the return of the stolen base to Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it has been. And, I don't know about you, but I loved seeing a pitcher throw over 16 times to first base. I think it was always awesome.
Yeah, that's something I definitely miss.
All right, so
I'll tell you, I'm surprised, and I don't know if I just hadn't paid as much attention to it. I was surprised that more teams didn't take advantage of 2 throws over to first base and then just go, right? Because if he doesn't get you on that third one, second base is yours.
Right.
I'm surprised that we didn't see more of that. I wonder if we will next year.
So that more aggressive lead after 2 throws over there, you just get belligerent with it, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's only been a year, so you don't know how that'll evolve, but it's likely to, right? But yeah, I mean, for as critical as, guys my age and above were about rule changes, we don't like our game being messed with. I do think that speeding it up by maybe trimming some of the unnecessary out of the game has actually worked better than what I even thought it would.
And not just for the sake of time, but for the sake of keeping the game moving.
Yeah. Yep. I definitely don't, as I guess cute as it is to look back and, see Big Poppy take a minute and a half between, getting in the batter's box. I definitely don't miss it and can definitely do without it. And I've said this before on here, like as a, amateur position player, there was nothing worse than having your pitcher just dick around on the mound and take, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute between pitches. It was just awful being a defensive player. You don't want to be standing out there for 25 minutes. So I've got to think that position players are even more alert, on their toes. They're not given as much opportunity to wander off out there in the outfield, right? Like you kind of have to stay on top of things. So I think that's probably benefited them as well. I
agree. Apparently they're going to review. I don't know how much you saw it. I only saw it once or twice and didn't really notice it, but I read about it. Apparently they're going to take a look at what some of the teams have taken advantage of, guys going into second base and not actually sliding, but continuing their turn around second and, as though they were going to continue to advance to third when there's a potential double play in order. And there's concern about the potential for injury and everything. And it's like, I don't know. Personally, I kind of hope that they just leave it the way that it is, because I mean, if you want to be aggressive and you want to, you're going to try and disrupt the play by being aggressive and taking that big turn towards third. Okay. But if you had slid and been safe at second, you'd be safe at second. But now you have the potential of, losing that lead runner because it doesn't have to throw to first. They can just pivot and get you in a rundown over at third base. And, your aggressiveness could come back to bite you. I don't know. I don't want to see them legislate that one out without taking a closer look at it.
Well, as long as they take their time and do it for the right reasons, I generally think they've gotten some of these calls right. And I know that most people think in one off season, Rob Manfred was bored in his office and just thought of some rule changes. But I got to give him a little bit more credit than that. I mean, they've analyzed this stuff and looked at ways that they can, cut some of the unnecessary time out of a game. And I think they've done a pretty good job doing that. I don't think you can argue it at this point.
And the good thing also is that they haven't just implemented it, right? They've used the minor leagues as an opportunity to actually put it in action where it doesn't,
test it, right?
Where it quote unquote doesn't count.
Yeah.
And see what the impact is and decide whether or not they're going to bring it to majors.
I think another thing that's helped is a lot of the young pitchers were already used to it, right? So any of the young players you had coming up were kind of used to having a pitch clock there anyway. So it wasn't a terrible adjustment for some of those guys. The veterans, of course, had to, they had to get used to it. I know that, the Cardinals, Gallegos took a lot of time between pitches, and he's a relief pitcher, and he had to adjust that this year. But you know what? Adjustments are something that you think professional baseball players are probably used to at this point, and they're going to have to do that. They have had to do it their whole career. So I don't know. So far, I'd have to say so good, but let's not get carried away. And I still don't know how I feel about the 3-batter minimum, but I guess I can't really complain about it at this point. Like, it has limited the trips out to the mound and the delays in the game. That's probably one I'm still on the fence about. Definitely on the fence about the Ghost Runner.
Oh yeah,
I'm glad we don't have to watch
that
it
one.
Here.
Hasn't changed.
Yeah,
I don't like the Ghost Runner. And look, haven't they said that they won't do it in the postseason?
They're not going to do it in the postseason.
So if you're not going to do it in the postseason, then why do you do it? You need to play with the same rules.
I'd say
all season long.
I'd say at least. I mean, there are a couple rules in all kinds of sports that are different like that, right? Like you don't have shootouts and
right.
And like soccer during the regular season. I don't know. I can't remember. I think hockey still do, but sudden death was altered a little bit in football. I guess my issue with the Ghost Runner is I wish they'd give them another inning or two of real baseball before they try to do that.
I agree.
I think doing it right in the 10th inning, I think, is where I probably that's probably the aspect of it that rubs me the wrong way. If they give them another inning to play real baseball, I think I'd be okay with it. Because like, as funny as it is to turn it on and it's a 20-inning game, like nobody wants to watch that shit. So,
right.
If you want to, try to kill a game off at inning 11, 12, I'd probably be okay with that. But at least give them one more inning to play, baseball as they know it.
Right. I agree. Especially because the approach to the game changes so drastically in that moment, right?
Yeah.
The whole game long, you've just been fighting to score as many runs as you can. And once you get into that Ghost Runner situation, the home team really is incentivized to just limit the damage and then go for the win by whatever means they can. Whereas the visitors are incentivized to go for a big inning.
Yeah.
But when you don't have that, it dramatically changes your approach to the inning, because first you got to get a guy on base.
Well, I'm just glad we don't have to watch that tonight. And
I agree.
As a player in this game right now, if you're an Arizona player, you're counting out at this point. You got 4 left, and you're on your way.
Well, at least they're not 5 outs away, because that's when you run into trouble.
Well, I'm stating that because there's 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th. So
yes, I know, but 20 years ago,
they've been counting.
You may not remember. 20 years ago, the Cubs were 5 outs away.
Well, and these guys have been counting out probably since I remember. I never played 9-inning games because most of when I played was 7. But for these guys, they're probably starting to count outs about that 7th inning, right? You got 9 outs to go.
Yeah, one time through 3. The lineup is probably what you're thinking, right?
And now 3. Yep.
This guy Ginkle seems a little fired up.
He's fired up.
He seems pleased with himself.
Who has home field this year?
It'll be the Rangers.
Okay.
That was the one given. Was that if the Rangers advanced, they would be the home team. But if the Astros had won, it was up in the air. I think if the Phillies had won, then they would have had home field against the Astros. Yeah, that sounds right. But if the Diamondbacks had, then it would have been to the Astros. But yeah, regardless of who comes out of this, the Rangers will have home field. So glad we've finally, we've talked about this many times before, but so glad we finally landed on some sanity when it came to home field advantage rather than that.
Oh God, that was
stupid tying it to the All-Star game. That was even worse than just alternating it each year.
Yeah, that was pretty horrible. I mean, the All-Star game in general, right? Like, I know some people won't agree with me. A lot of people won't agree with me. I think fans should just be taken away from voting on that thing. It's such bullshit anyway. You know, your biggest fan bases are going to have influence over who's starting in that game. Your bigger cities, whatever it is. It's, I truly think that, you know, the whoever the manager is in the team and the staff pick the all-star players. It's fine. Let players vote on it too. That's fine. Just take it out of the hands of the fans. Individually, most of us are, I think, pretty bright. We can pick a pretty fair team who deserves and who doesn't. But you leave it.
Or how about you do this? How about you reverse it? Instead of the fans picking the starters, why don't you let the players and the managers pick the starters and then let the fans vote on the bench, right? Okay, so here's who you're playing.
Yeah, I'd welcome that.
Who do you want to see?
Yeah, I'd welcome that. Sure, I would.
I think that'd be great.
I just think fans voting for starting lineup. Starting lineup. I mean, how many times have we seen like players that we know don't deserve to be there? They're having a shitty year. Other guys are having a much better year. They end up being a reserve, and you got a guy batting .212 in the starting lineup. Like, just
right.
I do like the one change. I do like the legacy player. I think that's been great. Seeing Albert in one more All-Star game. He even participated in the home run derby. I thought that was really entertaining. Now he was gassed. He wasn't advancing. He was done. But it was good to see. I mean, he competed in it. He didn't embarrass himself, and he did pretty well. Seeing Miggy in that in the All-Star game was fun too. And we know those guys aren't what they were. I do like having that one legacy on each side in the games. I think that was a good move. That was a good move for, I think, baseball and just the fans in general. And I think it's good for those young players, those young all-stars, to have a guy like that, participate in that event with them. I think it was actually pretty
agree.
Cool.
And it goes to the success of baseball, right? Is its history. And it's baseball, I think, more than any other sport, really does rely on its connections to its past. And so if you can find any way to continue that, right? So hopefully you should have some young kids who are finding out about just who Miguel Cabrera is, right? Who Albert Pujols was, and being inspired to find out more about those guys. And then maybe they read a little more, and that leads them to read about guys like Stan Musial and, to go even further back in baseball history so that eventually, someday they're pulling these big books off my shelf.
Here's another crazy thing that's happening right now in some players' minds. And ex-fans who've never played organized baseball before are going to disagree with me, which is fine. Those Diamondback players, Diamondbacks are at bat right now. There's one out, top of the ninth. Those position players right now, a lot of them, not every single one of them. Of course, they would love to have a bigger than 4-2 run lead. those guys want so badly to get back on that field and finish this game off right now that they're going to pop out of that dugout when 3 outs, and they're doing a pitching change right now, so it's delayed. That whole team wants back out on defense so badly right now to finish this off. And it's going to sound nuts. They're only up by 2 runs. They don't care what happens in this at bat. They want to pop back out of that dugout and back on that field. They want to get it over with. That center fielder, that left fielder, right fielder, third baseman, that's what they want to do right now.
Yep.
Now there's going to be somebody with, no chin going, "You're telling me that they would just give up their at bat in the top of the 9th?" I'm like, yeah, a lot of them would. So
because they want to stay locked in the field.
So you value 3 outs over a 3-run bomb?
Yes. Yes, the win is more important.
They badly want to be right back out there to finish it off.
That's right.
Are you telling me you value a base hit over a home run?
Yes, I do. Depending on the circumstances, yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. I think somebody made the comment to me when I said, I like guys that can hit safely. But what the dumbass didn't calculate was, hey, a home run's still a safe hit.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't say I valued a base hit over a home run. I said I like guys that put ball in play.
So it's funny. So I was talking with, I think I've told you about this guy. One of our janitors at the school is a huge baseball fan. He's a big White Sox fan. So it's been a frustrating season for him, but we've gone through the ups and downs of the season, particularly the Cubs season, as they were terrible, and then they surged, and then they fell apart. And we were talking a couple of weeks ago, just as the LCSs were starting.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I don't know. There's something I like about Bruce Bochy. He's old school. He's my kind of guy. I'd really like to see him get in. But, the Astros are the Astros, and they cheat. They'll do anything that they can to win. But I'd like to see the Rangers get in." And he's like, "What about the NLCS?" And I said, "Man, I really don't have a dog in that fight, but I hate the Phillies. More than that, I hate Phillies fans."
What's interesting is that I heard Derek
3 outs away.
Derek Gould's podcast this week. He had I don't know who he had on, but it reads like they were from Philadelphia or cover Philadelphia or something like that. He said an interesting evolution has had. Now, they haven't had a ton of championships in the city. The Eagles won not too long ago. The Phillies won in 2008. So they haven't had like a slew of them. But he said what's interesting is that they're not quite as cynical as they had been before. Like, they are more supportive of their players even when they're not doing great. Trey Turner is a good example this year, like struggled out of the gate this year.
Uh-huh.
But he said they're more apt, the temperature of the crowd is more apt to support players than it had been in the past, where, Philadelphia would have been a meat grinder, right? If you go in there and sign as a big free agent and you struggle, you would expect it to be like, you would think like New York media, like you're going to be put through the grinder there. And something's happened in Philadelphia where that's changed a little bit. And I think it's experiencing success, a couple championships here and there throughout their sports. But it's interesting to hear like that dynamic has shifted. So my question, if Santa Claus walks out on the field this year,
they still hit him with batteries.
Batteries and snowballs?
Yeah, I think they just can't resist.
Okay.
Right? Because there are.
I was trying to get you to rethink your opinion that you just hate Phillies fans.
No, because here's the thing. That there are still in the upper reaches of the bleachers and in the upper deck, there are still those fans who are those cynical ones, right? They're
well, of course, there's still going to be a few
uncivilized, right? The second they see Santa, they're going to start throwing stuff at him.
Well, is that because of the video?
That people get caught up in mobs, right? We do things in a mob that we would never do. And I think that once that first snowball hits Santa, all bets are off.
You think it's because that video is so popular that I got to be one of the ones that throws a snowball?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to be a part of the second one, especially because I can capture it on my own phone and post it to TikTok. Okay, see, now there's your second throw over. How is he not going on this next pitch?
Here's my thing with the whole Santa Claus thing. It is absolutely one of my top 10 moments in sports in my own personal history. Seeing that happen, and you've seen the video of it, right? Like one went, and then like 300 went.
Thank you. Oh my God, somebody actually did it. Did you see the size of that lead?
No, I was talking to you.
Yeah. No, I heard you.
I wasn't looking at the screen.
Okay. So just to put it in context, because we were talking about it before, Phillies have now thrown over twice with this runner. And so he basically gets a free lead. I mean, at this point, if he throws over, he's got to get an out or he's got second base. So how are you just not
And he was going on that
chugging
pitch.
Off of first base?
He was going on that pitch. Look, he's on second right now as a foul ball.
He's going again because he went to play before that too.
Well, you definitely know you can cheat another 6 inches, another foot, because
at least.
Yeah.
And then you go on first move. Doesn't matter whether or not he throws over, because if he throws over and he doesn't get the out, the base is yours. You cannot go back to first. I mean, that's the advantage of this, right? It's not necessarily the size of the lead. It's the fact that you get to take a one-way lead here. You don't have to go back to the base.
He didn't go on that, and
he didn't go. He should be standing on second.
Well, maybe he's winded because he just did it twice.
That could be.
It's an off-speed pitch too. That would have been a good one to, because it's inside. Yep. You got the right-handed batter right there in the face of the catcher.
Yep. He should be standing on second. And now I think it resets, right? It resets with the second, with a new batter.
Yeah, it does. Oh, but here's your Carroll, right?
Yeah.
Corbin Carroll.
3 for 3. 2 RBIs, 2 runs. He's having a good postseason. No Adolis Garcia, but good postseason. Although I'm just basing that on the fact that he has a 302 batting average, and we know that batting average means nothing.
Are you telling me batting average only doesn't actually tell you what happened?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it kind of does. Put the ball in play and you got on base safely like 30% of the time when he made contact. Means something.
Yep.
Doesn't tell you whether he barreled it.
I don't care. He got on base.
I doubt, Rod Carew or Tony Gwynn had the barrel rate you would approve at a combine.
So if somebody barrels it, are you telling me that means that they're guaranteed to get on base?
Nope. You could barrel it right to that first baseman on the line drive.
That's right. So I don't care if he barreled it. Did he get on? Did he get a hit?
Yeah, but you could always look at the exit velocity and
the
launch
doesn't tell you anything either. Yeah, that 105 mile an hour screaming single to right field, it had the same effect as that 50 mile an hour dribbler down the third baseline that they were unable to field.
You point me to every 107 mile an hour exit velocity line drive that would one hop the left fielder, to every Luis Salazar bloop that he experienced when he was with Chicago in 1989. I hated that guy. His hits were just as effective as any of the others. So I don't want to. There he goes.
Good. Oh, but that was the out.
3 strikes. Yep.
Okay, so that one didn't matter.
3 outs to go.
All right, here we go. 3 outs to go. Our first 2-hour podcast.
Hope I have enough bandwidth since I reduced our.
We're not going to be able to upload this one.
Yeah, I'll just have to pay a few extra ducats if we do. But I figured since we're heading into the off season, what's likely to happen? We talked about this a little bit before we finish off the game here, but I think that I'm not saying we need a break, because most people that want to look at their podcatcher every week go, where the hell are these guys at? I've been like, why do you guys need a break? You've had a break for like a month. I don't necessarily say we do, but typically these last couple of off seasons, we're like, hey, look, November's starts getting to the holiday time. I know you have a lot of activities with school. I'm taking a breather from fall sports, and look, action doesn't pick back up till a couple weeks after the World Series concludes. Anyway, when the free agent window starts to open up. Is it a week after or is it 2 weeks? I think it's 2 weeks after, right? Season concludes.
I think that they can start signing guys and have to start making decisions. I think it's 5 days after, but I think the window closes. I think it's 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, and that's with your own players you have control over, right? Or at least
Correct.
Exclusive window, even though they're going to be a free agent.
Right.
So things really don't start picking back up until winter meetings happen anyway. So that's usually early December-ish. So I imagine we probably pick things up at that point, a show or two in December is what I'm thinking. And then,
unless something major happens in the interim.
Sure. Yeah.
That we feel we need to comment on.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with our two teams. And I'm not counting, we are not going to be doing, and I hate this expression too, even though we used it early on because not a lot of people did. We would have an emergency pod every once in a while. But, when the Cubs signed you,
Jose
Darvish.
Quintana.
Jose Quintana, you Darvish, that kind of thing. We would
Mike
do
Matheny fired.
Yeah, that was a good one. We would do that every once in a while, but everybody calls it that now. Like anytime somebody farts, they got to have an emergency pod to cover it. Like, hear your fucking opinion on, somebody was DFA'd or whatever, but we'll certainly do things like that. Like if it's a significant enough move, like we'll jump on. We'll do that. We'll definitely talk about what happened or what didn't happen at the winter meetings. The Cardinals certainly have a slew of work cut out for them, and I doubt they can pull it all off, even though pitching has been the quote. We'll see what they can do. Like, you think Jordan Montgomery's stock has gone down in the postseason? Do you think, Aaron Nola didn't have the best night last night, but do you think his stock has gone down overall? Do you think Sonny Gray is there's only going to be one suitor? Like,
yeah, Blake Snell.
Yeah.
I think he might get paid.
When supply is low, demand is high. These guys they're going to get paid. All of them are. So,
yep.
We'll see. Can you put your money where your mouth is? And I know where my bet's going to fall.
You think they come up short?
Yes.
Do you think they land at least one of their big targets?
No.
You don't think so? You don't think that they get one of those big names?
I don't think so. I don't think they get.
What do you think the impediment will be? Years? Amount?
I think here's and I could be dead wrong, but I think what we're likely to hear is that they were working on a deal with so and so they didn't want to pull the trigger on this one. They were only willing to go so far. Somebody was willing to go a lot farther, and I think they'll make a deal for some pitchers, Pete. But I don't think those four big names. I think they're just going to be outbid by just about everybody. Anybody who's looking for pitching, which is everybody. I think they'll get outbid on every one of them. Unless they go, 2 outs to go. Unless they go extremely stupid and unpredictable and actually throw money around, which we just have not known them to do. No.
And what's going to really screw it up is that the Yankees are going to be in the market for pitching.
Yeah, it's all it takes. It takes
one big player. Completely blow up.
Yeah, one big player is going to wreck it, and you know what? It's their right if they've got the finances to, if they got the pocketbook to do that. Like, who can blame them? Now, I would predict that the Yankees are going to do what they have typically been known to do in recent years, and that is to, try to throw money at a problem and have it only get incrementally better instead of getting them to where they really want to go. Garrett Cole.
My God, that hair makes me want to throw up.
This is Marsh. Is that who it is?
Brandon Marsh. Yep.
Brandon Marsh. Trying to channel Charlie Blackmon and doing a poor job.
So, not being a Phillies fan, I'd love to see a picture of him from spring training. Like, is this something that he's been gradually working on all season, or did he come into spring training like this and he's just been curating this disgusting, hippie look.
Tommy Pham's on the bench. Oh, he's going to have an issue with that.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. Will he be angry? I mean, his anger might be tempered by actually getting to play in the World Series. So there's that.
There's that.
You think when one of his first calls is to Mo, once he gets to the World Series tonight, he's like, and he just starts, throwing it at him.
I don't, when they parted
or does
ways,
he wait until they play the Cardinals next year and he slaps him?
I don't know. It's interesting, right? Because I think they let Tommy Pham go in 2018, shortly after Schultz took over. I think he was dealt.
2 outs.
One more to go. But I don't remember feeling like, oh no, they let Tommy Pham go. It wasn't one of those situations. And it wasn't because I didn't like the guy. I mean, he was one of the few guys that year, at least, in the Matheny era, at the end of the Matheny era. I felt like
he had a little fire in the belly.
He's only one of the few that did. And part of me appreciated that. Like, hey, there's at least some person in here like getting fired up about stuff. When Matheny was just very impotent and docile. Like, it just had that feeling, right? Where I think that's why they made that managerial change. Things had gotten so stale that they just felt like there was no life coming from that dugout. He was one of the few you could point to and say, this person still wants to compete and do well. It might have been the only feeling I have when they dealt him. But of course they had made the managerial change. So I think the wheels of change had already started turning, right? So he was a part of that. But his time in St. Louis was short-ish. And the only thing we remember about Tommy Pham is that he used to be on the Cardinals, but we don't really remember what it was like when he was actually there. If that makes sense.
It was a very angry time. The sea was angry, my friend.
He's angry wherever he's been. Now we know that as fans. We know that as fans, we see that, but it's like, I bet if you talk to a lot of teammates, they're like, yeah, he's probably a pretty good teammate.
Yeah. As long as you're not in a fantasy football league with him.
As long as your name's not Jacques Peterson.
That's right. Oh boy. We got Phillies fans heading up to Isles.
Uh-oh.
They're already giving up.
They don't have the stomach to watch.
Yeah, I saw one of them right behind the plate.
Oh, no.
Oh, now they're covering their faces. Oh, this is bad.
Oh, that guy that was right behind the plate's gone now. He was standing there with his arms crossed. Yep.
Yeah, that's a bad look. I mean, that was the look for the last several innings last night in Houston, man. That background shot of the home plate camera was not good. Lots of people went home early last night.
Man, he's fighting it off. He's battling.
He is. A lot of upper third four seams.
He's trying to
Everyone
hear
in
his,
the dirt, and you're in the World Series.
Trying to hear his pitch comm.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Nope. That's it.
That's it. That's going to do it.
Diamondbacks are going to the World Series.
And there we go. Wow, they pulled off the. I'd still, I know they're wild card teams. They were clearly still the underdog going to this World Series or NLCS, and going to face the Phillies down 3-2 back at Philadelphia. That was a lot to ask of a young team like this. So
how do you like that in both championship series? The team that eventually goes has to battle back down. 3-2
and the
against a team that at that time looked to be the superior opponent, right? If you after game 5 in both series, it looked like it was going to be an Astros Phillies World Series.
Yep. Rematch.
And here we are,
yep.
2 game 7s. We got the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. Well, my money's on the Rangers. My money is on the ALCS MVP. Former Cardinal farmhand, Adolis Garcia.
Well, you're going to have Zach Gallen starting game 1 here for the Diamondbacks. So I will say that I'll still probably pull for the NL in this case. Not that it's going to
I
matter.
tell you, I got to think that the advantage right now goes to the Rangers simply because of the way that they were able to finish off the Astros with a fairly easy game. Not a lot of stress. The outcome was pretty clearly settled early on. And also, obviously, they get the extra day of rest because their series started a day earlier. So
AL advantage, right? Every time.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, well, for the Diamondbacks, you wonder if a young team like this is, pardon the wonderful expression, if they've blown their emotional wad here, right? Is there anything left for a World Series with a young team like this? I don't know. We'll surely find out. Hopefully, the World Series this year has been as entertaining as the Championship Series because both of them went the distance, and I'd love to see a World Series. Gosh, at least go 6 games. At least make it interesting, right? Let's not see a 5-1 or a 4-game sweep.
Well, the one thing that we can count on with these two teams obviously being the home teams is that we don't have to worry about the weather. We probably don't have to worry about the weather being a factor.
No.
Right? Arizona and Arlington, I think that we're going to be fairly good. There won't be any weather interruptions. There won't be any freezing cold nights or 15-minute rain delays that change the course of history.
And I'll be out there for Thanksgiving at my brother-in-law, so I can just pick up a Diamondbacks World Series probably shirt in the airport.
Very nice. You can pair it with your Padres hat.
I won't be wearing that out there. All right, man. Well, hey, Pete, lead us out of here. This has been maybe a record long.
Easily our longest podcast ever. 2 hours, 15 minutes. I'm going to have to delete some old content from our SoundCloud because that's not going to allow any other episodes other than this one once Ron actually gets it updated. So if you've enjoyed this episode, what have you been drinking? Because Ron and I are looking for recommendations. But don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends to do the same. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. We also occasionally live stream like we did tonight on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to check out the other Gateway City Sports Network podcasts. Maybe not. Who knows? You can find them, gatewaycitysports.com. You can find Elliot, who failed to join us tonight. You can find him on X at @TOR_Elliot. And you can find her on at.
Here. You just look at it on my air. Right there.
Yeah, there you go. TOR_Ron75. And then you can get in touch with us at any social media channel at Team of Rivals Pod. That's it. That's all there is, my friend.
All right, Pete. Once again, thanks for taking us out. And thank you for the folks who joined us. I'd love to read down the list of names here because a lot of these people I don't know, never heard of, but maybe they're part of one of those rival division shit-talking groups that I'm still a part of at Facebook because they're not strictly Cardinal related, which are the worst ones. But I don't know. We're definitely not going to be. I predict we're not going to do another one. We're not going to have the steam in our engine to do another one of these on Thursday. But hopefully, very soon we can get back on one before the holiday breaks and pick it back up. I think once we get towards the winter meetings. But I don't know. Maybe this has been kind of fun to do a live watch on this. And if the World Series ends up being entertaining, maybe we do another one. Maybe we get the third wheel on here to join us. He said he was going to join us at the end.
And we still have a long promised but yet to be delivered live watch of Elliot's championship wrestling match. Right. So we're going to have to do that at some point too. That one I don't think will take us 2 hours and 20 minutes to cover, though.
It's not going to, and I don't want it to, and none of us want it to. But, until next time, I'm not going to say next week, until next time, we love you all so much. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye, everyone.